When I started the company, my stated goal was everybody gets paid. I have a very good idea of what my bottom dollar minimum is.
You guys don't pay writers and you're exploiting. It's like, actually, we're all exploited here.
Wow, I can't get $10 a word for a story. You're like, you know, that was essentially hidden patronage, and now we've got more transparent forms of patronage and grant giving.
I'm really happy to be having this conversation. I am a writer and an editor. I'm on both sides of the equation here. I'm a writer who struggles to get paid, and I'm also the editor of anthologies and struggle to pay writers. So I understand this from all angles. I'm also somebody who's been writing for a long time, and I was just, as I was preparing for this, I was recalling that sometime in 2007, toward the end of 2007, I started writing an essay that was sort of a rant, and it was about how since I graduated college in 1987, I was still getting the same $2 to $3 a word from major women's magazines, and when were they going to raise the rate? And then 2008 happened, and the major women's magazines said to me, well, we've got $1 a word for you, take it or leave it. And then the internet disrupted writing and editing, and suddenly I was writing a column for the Rumpus for free. And I was writing for the Billfold for $50 a piece. And so I've seen things really change, and it's really frustrating as both a writer and an editor and a publisher, I'm sure, to make sure that writers are getting paid, and it's really important. So I am very, very happy to be part of this conversation. I was also part of the Twitter volley that got Manjula Martin to start the Who Pays Writers Tumblr, which then led to Scratch Magazine. So anyway, when I write for the Rumpus for free, I actually get something in exchange, which is that I got access to writers. I have a column on the Rumpus called Conversations with Writers Braver Than Me, and I've gotten to interview Vivian Gornick and Nick Flynn and so many great writers, Cheryl Strayed, and then I got to have a lot of them contribute to my anthologies. So I got something in exchange. It wasn't money. And then it led to other opportunities for me. So when you have people write for you, how much of the equation is prestige? How much of what you offer to people who write for your publications is prestige?
I mean, there's that phrase, like, you can't eat prestige for dinner, and I always have that in mind. I'm very proud that BOM pays its writers, but at the same time, we don't pay nearly enough as much as we would all like to, and that's just a reality of being a nonprofit. I mean, we were very excited that we were able to pay our writers in 2014 with a fundraising campaign from 2013, pay our writers this year with a fundraising Kickstarter campaign from last December. So because it's just one of those words that isn't quantifiable and therefore is so abused by publishers, I try not to ever say it with our writers. Over to you, Lisa.
We still pay in prestige. I mean, the reality is that we just started paying writers last year because of the Kickstarter that we did, but we're 11 years old now. This is our 11th year. And I think that part of that for us is beyond sort of even, I mean, we were an internet-only free online magazine 11 years ago, which I think was really early. I think we're internationally focused. We publish long form, really like fundamentally, we were talking in the green room about diversity in publishing. That was always like our mandate. And I think that we were always kind of like the scrappy underdog in terms of doing stuff that other people weren't quite doing. We were filling a hole. And so I think that for our writers, You know, and for the writers that have come up with us, like I think it's always been kind of like this is a place that champions writers and readers who aren't getting what the marketplace wants to give them, you know, and is serving a niche. And so I think that there's that, we will always have that, I think, reputation for being that way. And so there's always a little bit of like, it's moved from prestige. I think it started with, we can give you an audience and you can read someone, although we would never say prestige. Somebody like, we'll pay you in prestige.
Well, you also had a lot of writers writing for you guys who got paid everywhere else. Like,
yeah,
that was also...
Right, so we had a lot of writers who came to us who were actually like, it was their donation. They were like, this is the gift that we can give. This is a place where we can work with great editors, where we can, you know, feel free, where we're not constricted by what, the, you know, people think that everyone wants to hear, you know.
So did it give them an opportunity also to publish pieces that maybe elsewhere were too long or on a topic that they weren't going to be able to get paid for?
Absolutely. And I think that we are like at Foundation, I mean, we do lots of different things. We do poetry and fiction, but we're fundamentally like kind of like a politically radical entity. And I think that that is a lot of it. The activism of Guernica, the like quiet activism of the magazine is part of why people wanted to be a part of that. Like, I feel like we've always been like kind of like a coalition, you know, more than we've been an organization. And that's shifting now because we're, you know, professionalizing and starting to pay writers and thinking about like the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. But I think that that's been a lot of it, being a part of the club, you know, being a part of something that was a little bit different, and then also, you know, feeling like that was a place where they could kick back. I mean, no one is paid at Guernica. I mean, I'm the only person, and that's just because I like sit in the office like doing our books, you know. But it's
And you fundraised your own salary.
And I fundraised my own salary. Yeah, I worked for free for 20 months, you know. But it's like we none of us are doing this for the money. And I think that it's really clear, like if you look more than 10 seconds in, sometimes we get like crappy comments, like when we'll ask for an intern and they're like, you guys don't pay writers and you're exploiting. It's like, actually, we're all exploited here. But it's like, it's the way that we give back. I mean, it's like, it is the volunteer work that almost everybody on staff does. Like everybody has a thing that they believe in, whether it's animal rights or, you know, the environment or, you know, going to a soup kitchen on Thanksgiving. It's like, this is the thing that we do.
Let me back up, and it was card number 6, but I'm going to ask now, which is, what can you each tell me what you pay writers? And actually, I before you emailed me today, I looked on the Who Pays Writers Tumblr, and they've got it wrong. They say that BOM does not pay.
I should email them.
You should email Manjula. So yeah, why don't we go around and what do you pay writers?
It ranges based on whether it's like an interview for the print publication, the print quarterly, or it's like a short review. So it ranges from $50 to $200. Unfortunately, $200 is like the high end, and that's for interviews that are, you know, 5,000 words long and are rigorously edited with both interviewee and interviewer. And that's something that when talking about it today with our editorial staff, and I was like getting the breakdown, they were like, I could see in their eyes, they were like, holy shit, why, like, that's so low. So that's how much we pay.
It ranges for us too. It depends. We fund. We've luckily gotten gotten funding from the National Endowment for the Arts and NISCA, and Open Society Foundation came in. It's like if we get $15,000 to do a special issue on free expression, we'll pay as much as we can because we don't sort of like try to save that money if it's like project specific. So those writers get paid $1,000 for a feature, which is like a lot, especially when no one is getting paid at the office. We'll pay $250 for a feature for one of our special issues, which we kickstarted. Those numbers sort of flux. You know, it's like it's $100 for an interview. We pay not very much for, you know, a poem. But we do pay poets, which I'm always really proud of.
That's pretty amazing,
that we like,
actually.
you know, when I first was coming up with the structure, it was really funny because we had to think about like, okay, well, how are we going to divide this tiny little bit of money into like something that can sustain us over the year? And I was like, we're going to pay everybody the same. And everybody was like, the poets too? And I was like, even the poets. I love the poets. They're the nicest. They're the most grateful. They don't hunt you down for checks if you're late. It's great. I love the poets.
They don't
They're just
expect
happy.
much, right?
They're like, thank you for paying me. But yeah, so it ranges. I mean, so it's like on the low end, $50, on the high end, $1,000. But it's like we're so new to paying that I think like all these things will happen. Like where a funder will come in and we're like, we can pay a lot, or you know, or this is like we're running out of money, so this is all we can pay. So it's really unstable for us right now. And I think that like in the next 2 or 3 years, as we figure out how to scale up to like everything that we publish, it'll be different.
So we paid 5 cents per word up until last year, and we raised that to 7 cents per word. That comes to, because we are buying fiction, that comes to, on average, about $300 per story. However, we pay that same amount to Goerge R. Martin, who is one of our contributors, as we pay to an author who's never been published before. So we're not differentiating based on their career, and they know upfront what we're looking to pay. They know upfront what our contract is. It's up on the website. We reach out to people, and we'll also read open submissions, so that way folks who are not necessarily already a part of of the industry can still potentially get in if their story is good enough.
That's amazing.
In genre, it's a little bit different in the sense that one of the things you were talking about earlier about how the women's magazines were paying $1 to $2 per word. We just don't have that, unfortunately, in science fiction and fantasy. Science Fiction Writers of America, which is our official guild, it's like our equivalent of a Screen Actors Guild, defines professional rates as anything above 6 cents per word as of currently, and that was only 5 cents a word a year ago. So our numbers are really low, and we're, one of the things that when I started the company, my stated goal was everybody gets paid. And I don't just mean the authors, but the copy editors, the cover artist, everybody involved. There's only one person in the company that doesn't get paid, and that's me. So I donate my time, but I would not expect anybody I'm working with to do the same.
I really applaud that, and I also identify with it because I've just published 2 anthologies that are doing really well for anthologies, but the advances were so small, and I had 28 writers in one collection. I mean, my first advance, the advance for Goodbye to All That was $6,000. I had 28 writers to pay with that, and then the next, I had 27 writers for the next book, and I gave my entire advance to my writers and just crossed my fingers and hoped. And Goodbye to All That is doing really well. They're both doing really well, but I'm not getting rich. I'm barely paying myself, so I really respect that you're not paying yourself. Where do you make your money then?
So we started out on Kickstarter, which is why we're here. We raised the seed money for the first book. I kicked in some additional money because I really believed in the idea of what we're trying to do, and I felt that we can sort of roll it forward. And what I mean by that is, we would produce the first book, which is what we use the Kickstarter funds for, and then we would print a large enough print run where not only would we satisfy the backers and initial pre-orders, but we would be able to be selling that book for 2 to 3 years and not paying a much higher rate of print on demand that we would have to invest in. And so we've done that with every single book so far, and every time we do a print run, we kind of push it as high as we can on the numbers. And because of that, every time we sell a copy, our margin is much, much healthier than is typical for our industry. And so that's what's paying the bills. Again, I have not actually paid myself, if I paid myself minimum wage for the hours that I spent working on the projects, we would definitely be in a huge hole. But as it is, we're able to break even, and once we started running a little bit of a surplus, what I did with that surplus is I raised the pay rate from 5 cents to 7 cents per word, because again, I'm a working writer. I sell a lot of short stories to different markets. I know what it is to be paid so little for the amount of time that you put in, and I definitely want to at least be on sort of like the higher end of what that strata is for our industry.
You've just reminded me, I ghostwrite also, and I mostly get my work through a ghostwriting agent, but I also am on some lists where I guess listservs or whatever, and sometimes I'm offered things for a success fee, which means that I can write the book proposal and I can, hope that they get a deal and that they can afford to pay me a portion of their whatever they get. So it's a success fee, which I thought was an interesting choice of words. In case we succeed, put in a lot of work and maybe we'll succeed. Why don't we also talk about the Kickstarters that you've done? How many have you done?
So far 5, and we'll be doing a 6th one actually next month. So
wow.
Coming up. Margot will be hearing from me about it soon.
And how have they been? I mean, have you made more than what you've, your goal? Have you succeeded your goal or
Every
surpassed?
single one of them has funded. The very first one, we asked for $5,000 and we raised about $6,500, which was very nice and allowed us to buy some additional fiction and post it up for free on our website. Every single one since then has funded well. The last one, which is actually the only one that I did for my own book rather than for an anthology of other authors' work, I asked for relatively little money. I asked for something like $3,000, and I ended up doubling that. So that was really nice, because that's still, even though it's my stories, I'm kind of just putting it back into the company, and so that's going to allow me to pay authors for the next anthology, that little bit extra.
And what do you pay for each story in the anthology?
7 cents per word.
Oh, right.
That's, it's always, we always do the word count, because I'm not going to pay the same thing for a 1,000-word flash story as I will for a novelette.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I looked. Your anthologies have what, 5 or 6 pieces in them, or?
20 to 30.
Oh.
Yeah, it's about 80,000 words per book.
Okay, got it. I thought they were longer. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're looking for stories that are relatively short, because most of the anthologies thematically are humor, and I find that humor usually works best when it's very laconic.
Right.
So.
Thanks. So tell me about your Kickstarters.
Well, we did 2. We were not as organized. We did them like on a hope and a prayer. We asked for a lot, and it was rough. And we got there. The first Kickstarter that we did was the first time that we'd ever organizationally really asked for money in a big, bold way. And I think that it was kind of like a coming out party for us. Like, we're a nonprofit, we don't have any money, this is our structure, this is what we don't do, this is what we want to do. And we did it for a series of special issues. We're an international magazine around America. We ended up, I think we asked for $25,000, I think we did 28. We did it in 2 weeks. Because we thought, we were like, we don't want to bother people for more than 2 weeks. Like, it just seems like a lot. I would highly recommend that if it's your first ever Kickstarter, not doing that, giving yourself a couple more weeks. But it was great. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing. It was literally like, well, Kickstarter seems like a great idea. And then like midpoint, we were like, we might lose in public. And then, everyone, like, we had like an emergency meeting, and everybody was like, I can get Edwidge Danticket to sign some books, and Richard Price will take somebody to lunch, and we like redid all of the benefits. And so we did that, and it was great, and we made it. And we were like, we were really very excited when we overfunded it, and when we hit the goal. But it was like the day up. Like, we didn't overfund it like 5 days early, like where we could just be like, yeah. We overfunded like that day. It was like we were at like 24,000, and then like, by the end of the day, we had a little more than we thought we were gonna have. And then, because we're ballsy and have a lot of nerve, we did one 11 months later for $15,000 for our first print edition. And we really did that at that time. We didn't have a staff member. I was the only staff person. It was like kind of like do or die at that point. It was like, we need to keep moving forward. We need to be able to, and so the timing of that, I think, had a lot to do with kind of like, we were in our 10th anniversary, we needed to do it. It was a little close to when we'd done the previous Kickstarter. And that one was, we really used it as like a pre-order mechanism. So really what we did was, okay, here's the book. The primary benefit is like a $25 book. And like, if you give us $25, we will give you the book that we're also going to sell for exactly the amount of money that you're giving. But, in aggregate, it really helped us. And then some people gave us larger gifts, and it really funded the whole process. We did really, it's like, in retrospect, we maybe needed another $5,000 to do it more comfortably, but it was enough to allow us to do it and to actually get the project on the road. And for us, it was like, we needed to demonstrate that we're nonprofits. So we needed to demonstrate that we were paying writers. We needed to demonstrate that we could print, and that allows us to like fundraise against the, with more institutional funders or government funders for the work to actually keep building on it. So that was kind of, I think, the thought of both of our Kickstarters, which was like, we can't keep doing this every year. Like, I think if we were to like launch a $25,000 Kickstarter just for our special issues, next summer, people would be like, no, like, you can't pressure us into giving you this money. I think we could do a smaller one for a smaller project and it would be fine, but I don't think we can do these big, change our lives Kickstarters.
But I think when you give the book as a reward,
it helps.
I think it really helps. There's up where I live up in Kingston, and there's a woman who did a book about eating wildly. It's not Ava Chin, it's someone else. She and an illustrator, they did a Kickstarter for like $20,000 and they made $125,000. And the key reward was the book.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success because that's what they were giving.
Yeah, people liked that. I mean, people really, it's the reality of fundraising, whether it's Kickstarter or whatever, is that people want something. It's very hard to get somebody to just write you a check because they love you. And even if it is for paying writers, they don't want to just read it for free online.
Right, they want.
Which I wish they did. I wish people were like, oh, I see how this works. Like, I am consuming this product online for free, and when I give you a donation, that is actually like a contribution and an investment in what I'm actually consuming myself. But they want something else.
I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Like break down across the audience groups because we had a similar Kickstarter to your first one. Mm-hmm. I mean, but it was specifically like. Instead of special issues, I think ours was more broad, which may have been, I think, in retrospect, a little bit more difficult to raise money for, which was we're going to pay all of our online writers in 2015. Mm-hmm. And in the office, we're like, I guess if we don't make it, how do we prove that?
Right.
Like the website will still have stuff on it.
Right.
And then we're just going to I don't know, so we're sorry or something. Mm-hmm. But we found that because we had talked a lot about your Kickstarter was really successful, and you and Maris both gave us great advice, and which was almost contradictory advice, but then it broke out according to the different donors. So the younger donors enjoyed the perks, and we just copied you guys wholesale and got similar perks. And then the older donors who had been reading for a long time were the ones who were more kind of, I don't know, I was going to say spirit-based, that's not a real phrase, but they were kind of giving because of the mission of the...
Well, you have to have a constituency, you have to know.
Yep, and it was interesting, of course, one of our board members came through with a big donation, which was incredibly generous and helped us get funded, again, of course, the last 24 hours. So we had that ulcer for 3 weeks. And we were like, if you had just done it 3 days before, I wouldn't have the migraines. But it was interesting to see how much it split between the tons of smaller donations for perks-based, and then...
So we were interesting. Yeah. We didn't almost, we have one, we had no, I don't think we had any gifts that were bigger than $1,000. We didn't have a single, we don't have any benefactors. We don't have our board is still very small. We're growing our board this year, but we have, the two founders who their donation is their life's work. And then one other donor who gives us money in all these other ways, and so she gives some, but it was we didn't have that. So it was we really had to hustle on those 25, 50, a couple people came through with 500. Nyla Rogers gave us $1,000, which was really awesome. I was like, get it, Daft Punk.
That's great.
When more of your contributors win MacArthur Genius grants, then they'll come back.
Yeah, no, we're still courting our, you guys are older, right? How old are you?
Yeah.
30, 40?
34 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And it takes a long time to cultivate that kind of big audience that actually is okay, this is where I want to give my money. You have to train them.
And
we could have gone away.
Fortunate. Yeah, a lot of the earliest bomb writers and editors, then their art practice took off, and then now they're contributing work to the auction or something, and then that helps fund us. So it's now we're seeing the life cycle, and it's very, but
Those
it's very lucky.
Donors.
So how many did
They
you
gave
do?
so much. So many of our contributors were the number, the biggest group of people I could really attach to were people who write for the magazine. These writers, writers were paying to pay other writers, and they often decline their, if they're being paid for something, they'll just give it to somebody else.
How many did you do? How many crowdfunding campaigns did you do?
We did a Kickstarter last December, and that was, I think our target, I think our target was 15,000, and we raised 18,500. And we did a crowd hoster before I worked at Bomb in December 2013, and that was I think they tried to raise 15,000. Well, they tried to raise 20, they raised 15, and then they had to put 5,000 on someone's credit card and then do some financial jujitsu to make sure that person wasn't screwed by the creditors. So yes, yeah, 1.
How helpful has crowdfunding been in raising enough money to pay writers? And do you articulate that as an aim? And then, you know, do contributors respond to that specifically? Do they say, I'm really glad that you're doing this, I want writers to get paid? Does anybody care? Like, do the readers and the people contributing to do they care about the writers?
We're approaching 2 million unique views a year. They don't all care. I wish they did. If I had $1 from every single one of those people, we would have a real operating budget, and you know, and all of our writers would be paid and paid decently. I think that the contributors care, and like our community cares about whether we pay writers or not. And so I think the crowdfunding, we wouldn't have been able to do it. I couldn't think of a single way to generate money to start paying writers in any kind of like meaningful time frame without any demonstrated budget line dedicated to that, because I'm used to doing funding through grants. That's the kind of fundraising I've traditionally done. So it was like, for us, it was both a boon and a necessity to do it as a crowdfunding project.
And you say this on the copy on your Kickstarter page. We want to be able to pay our writers.
On our Kickstarter page, that was the message. I mean, for us, it was like very clear that, like, you know, and in talking to everybody at Kickstarter, I think it was really important, like, to tell a story. You know, it's like you have the video, you have, you know, this little area where you can write about who you are. You know, you're constantly tweeting about it. You're constantly, you know, talking about it at parties. You're just telling the same story. It's a similar thing to like when I do, like, every year we do these really, really, really like overly dramatic fundraising appeals where it's like, this is who we are and this is where we want to be next year. And it's just like, but it's nice because it's a narrative, right? Like, it's not just we're poor, give us money. It has to be like, this is how far we've come. This is what we've done with it. Or like our server went down one year for like 4 days. We were all freaking out. We just had like 20, like GoDaddy account. Like, I mean, Guernica, like really, we had like a $25 a month GoDaddy account. It was a disaster like 2 years ago. And like it crashed and we could not get it back up and we just had to like pay more. We just had to pay like, I don't know, like $300 a month for like a regular server, like, which is like ridiculous. We should have had it. But, so we just came up with this campaign, which was like a world without Guernica. It's like for 4 days, because we didn't have any money, you guys didn't have any Guernica. And it's like, these are the things, and then that was our instrument, which we could say, like, these are the things that really go on when you're paying to publish an online magazine. And so Kickstarter was just sort of like writ large, like a bigger platform for telling that story, which was, okay, we don't pay our writers, we are 10 years old, we would like to grow up, help us grow up. Yeah. You know, you're reading, they are writing, this should be transactional.
And people responded.
And people absolutely responded to that. And I think people thought it was like, you know, people could, you know, it's like, it's a community too. It's not like strangers in like random places in Canada were like flocking en masse to pay for our Kickstarter. You know, it's like, it was mostly people we knew. You know, it's like we had probably 500 or 600 donors for the first one. And I probably hung out with 408 of them, you know? And it's like, and then there were like 200, or somebody that I work really closely with had, or somebody's mom, you know, or a writer. But, you know, I think it was, that community was like, you guys should be paying writers and this is like a nightmare. And they were glad to have like a mechanism through which to support us doing that.
I feel like I want to start a campaign, you know, and with like a hashtag, writers need money to live. Like, this is something that my whole life I've had to deal with. And as time goes on and as, you know, as there's more to read, I think that especially people who aren't in publishing, aren't writers, you know, they just see there's so much to read for free on the internet, and they just kind of think I'm just having a grand old time in my pajamas, and wait, I have to pay, you have to get paid for this? You know, well, I don't have any other marketable skills.
I think one thing though that's a little bit, that I get like a little fussy about with the like paying writers, I believe in paying writers, like you were saying. I think I'm an administrator, I'm not a writer. I was like, free work, what? Like, I don't understand what free work is, you know, unless I'm like volunteering. But it's like, but you know, I get emails sometimes from writers that are like, you guys don't pay, I'm not doing this. And they're sending this letter to a person who has been editing cranky writers' works, making them beautiful, giving them opportunities for 10 years. And I think, how ungrateful. This person is working for free. And they're a writer too, and they're doing this. And I think sometimes the lack of graciousness and the entitlement that writers feel to become angry about the marketplace, I think is like, and which is not to say that I don't think that writers should be paid, because I'll fight all day to make sure that they are. But it's like, but writers need to actually check it a little bit, because so many of these these editors are making nothing. You're talking about, but you give the whole thing away, and it's just like, at what point, at what point is editing not art? At what point is not like? At what point is like not the identification and the sort of like nurturing? It's like you would never tell a midwife that she should work for free because you were the person giving birth.
Right.
You would never dare.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me what people expect. But and I'm sort of at the other end of the spectrum. I'm like afraid to ask or afraid to speak up and say. So one of the questions I have is, when a writer comes to you and says, but you're not paying me enough, or I need more money, do you find that you feel like, well, that's a really entitled person I don't want to deal with, or do you feel like that's a person with confidence and I want to help that person? Do we, as writers, do we come to you and say, I need some more money? Actually, that happened to me with two writers, one for Goodbye to All That and one for Never Can Say Goodbye, where my deadline came and went, and in each case, the writer came to me and said, I want to give you my piece, but you're not paying me enough. Yeah. And I went into my own pocket because I wanted these people, and I respect them, and I didn't feel like, damn entitled person. But anyway.
The ask is respectable, completely.
Yeah, I guess it's how you ask. But do you encourage a writer to speak up and say, I need more money?
It's an odd way to think of it. For me, I think no matter what the scale is, whether you can only pay a few dollars or you can pay a couple $100 or you're at the New Yorker, there will always be people who want as much money as you can possibly give them and more than you can give them. And at the same time, at the other end, you have editors and publishers who want to support their community and the writers as much as they can without going under or without not being able to cover operational costs, even as a nonprofit, right? So that's what I think is the bottleneck or the point of tension with this, because from both sides of it, I feel like I can see the downward pressure on writers to write for free, because there will always be another writer behind them. Can't quantify this, but maybe someone who's less talented who will write for free, where you want to get paid, $100. And then on the other hand, you have the editor or publisher who just wants to publish the best writing they can, and the best publishing should cost money. There's a lot of shitty writing that you could publish for free out there. There's mountains of it, and the writing that deserves to be paid for by an editor or a publisher stands out. I can tell it. I think that was one of the things that was very nice about when the Paris Review Daily launched, is they were like, we're going to pay writers because we'll get the stuff they're not going to give to someone else. But when it comes to because our longtime contributors know we pay as much as we can, but the first timers are asked for more, we're like, this is how much we can give. I mean, it's cold comfort. We give them a free subscription to the magazine too, but I mean, on the other end of it, I keep thinking the New Yorker will pay you money when they kill your articles. That's crazy to me.
We pay a kill fee.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, when I was saying earlier that it's more like a lack of understanding of the marketplace. Please, every person should be able to ask for what they need. Everyone has the right to ask for what they need. I think that turning into a frothing, internet lynch mob, without actually having a fundamental understanding of how business works, nonprofit or otherwise, I find really unfortunate. Yeah. And I think that actually the people that do end up suffer are these people who just believe in writers and who went are smart and hardworking, and they could do anything that they want in their life, and they're instead choose to work with writers who are complicated and wonderful, but that's the choice, and it's and then to sort of be mistreated online, even sort of your outlet, I think that can be really rough, it's I think that it's an ecosystem. So I think that one of the things that I think is just to bring it back to a point I was making earlier, I think that it is just really important for readers to understand that when they're consuming something, particularly online, and it's free, that there is a whole host of things that are happening behind the scenes that require money.
Make it happen.
And that it's like when you're asked, when you see a pop-up or you see a Kickstarter, it's like, you know, if you like the magazine, you have to really make a decision as to whether or not it's worth it to you because you are consuming something that is not free, even though it is free. You know, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
And not to like sound like Milton Friedman, but you know, like, you know, there's all this stuff happening in the background. And then I think writers need to understand that there's this whole put upon impoverished group of people, often working for free completely as volunteers in the dead of night, trying to get their work clean to readers, you know, to work with them to bring out their voices. And I think that everyone just needs to sort of like understand what's really working and like work together to try and figure out how to come up with better systems. If somebody comes up to you and I can't give this, somebody else wants this for $1,000 and I have rent, God bless you.
Yeah.
You know, or like bless your heart for even considering giving it to someplace like Goerge.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's not a problem. And it's like when somebody just can't do it because of the money, then it's like, it's sad, and it makes you fight harder to raise some money. But it's like, but I think it is like just so much more complex than like this hashtag pay writers thing that happens. And I think that writers are vocal, writers are tweeting, and they tend to overtake the conversation. And there's not room for administrators or editors to be like, but it's like, but with what?
Right.
You know, and.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, what about you? How do you get some of the high-profile writers that you've got to contribute when you've got such a small budget?
Well, first of all, I ask. I reach out to them, I tell them about the project, I tell them what we're trying to do, and I tell them what our budget is. And a lot of the time, I will get a no. And that's perfectly reasonable. If you have an author who is accustomed to getting, 15 cents a word for their short fiction, if they have time to write short fiction at all, then they're not going to write it for me for less. However, a lot of the folks who came up in genre are used to, they understand what the budgetary concerns are. They understand that there's not a lot of money. They understand that the editors are not getting paid a lot or anything. Like you were saying, they understand that the budget for a typical anthology will be somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000. And so they know that you can't squeeze blood out of the stone. So it comes down to whether they're excited about the project and whether they want to contribute to it at that pay rate. Having said that, as an author, I have a very good idea of what my bottom dollar minimum is. So if somebody's paying less than that, I'm just not going to submit to them. And I understand that they can't afford more, and that's fine. I'm just not going to send them my work, and neither will a lot of other people who are able to sell their work at a higher rate. If they come to me and they ask, I will tell them what my minimum rate is, and if they want something cheaper, they can have a reprint. If they want something that was printed before somewhere else, then they can have that cheaper. They still can't have it for free though, because I feel like I don't want their exposure. I feel like I can get the exposure elsewhere. And in genre specifically, it's not a nonprofit thing. It's not a nonfiction thing. When it comes to fiction, for science fiction and fantasy, there are no truly respectable markets that don't pay. So no matter usually the markets that command the most respect also happen to be the markets that are paying the highest rates. Not always, but usually. And so I understand where the authors are coming from. If they know how much time they have to spend to come up with their stories and how much love and work they have to put into them, and they want to get paid for them, and that's fine. And to me, the problem with the non-paying markets, it really isn't those authors, because people like me who have been doing it for a few years and understand how it works and can make those decisions for themselves. I'm not going to go and berate somebody for not paying enough. I'll just not send them a submission. My problem is that the brand new people who are coming up and they're very hungry and they're just starting out and they're desperate for that credit, for that publication credit, they end up basically getting taken advantage of because they end up submitting their work to places that don't pay anything or pay something like a penny per word because they're just so desperate to get their work out there. And I can't blame them. My very first publication was in one of those non-paying places. I've learned quickly enough, thank God. But my very first one was a non-paying place. My second one was a talking paying market. And then I learned to do better. So I want the markets to pay more. I want people to be educated about it because I want the new writers to understand that their skill is worth something.
And also, I've seen arguments online where established writers say, young, hungry writers don't undercut us. I mean, yes, you're going to charge less, but don't give it away for free because you're lowering the value of what we all do. which is tricky because if you are young and hungry and you need to establish yourself.
But I feel like sometimes those older writers came about in an age of increased, like, much more opaque marketplace where it wasn't understood that, like, the magazine you were buying was financed by, like, a billionaire who was willing to lose millions of dollars every year. And so, of course, like, now that that industry has been disrupted and it's a little bit more transparent, those people are like, wow, I can't get $10 a word for the story. You're like, you know, that was essentially hidden patronage, and now we've got more transparent forms of patronage and grant giving. And to me, it's like, I can't really buy that argument that they're pissed that, like, younger. I'm like, you know what, like, that we'll be complaining about the same thing in like 30 years. That's depressing. But
me too.
yeah.
Like, did you ever see Beautiful Girls?
Wait, yeah.
So beautiful. There's a scene
Minnesota.
in Beautiful Girls where
Yeah.
this guy is in love with his high school girlfriend, and like he's dating this woman, and she's like
Matt
really
Dillon.
Matt Dillon is like, and he's really
Yeah.
annoyed and that he's in love with this woman, and like she's just freaking out because she just can't get her man to love him, and she's like, you are in love with a way of life that will never ever be available to you ever again. And it feels sort of like that $3 a word thing is that. Like, it's like there's a lot of people very, like, just holding on to their high school girlfriend who was super hot, you know, and like, but she, like, the girlfriend is never gonna be 17 again because we grew up, and it's never gonna be 1997 again, and
It's also a good
you know.
anti-porn rant. Yeah. It's with like Rosie O'Donnell's in the barbershop.
that
and
was a
she's-
really
yeah,
good one too, where
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, you know, where you have to be like, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll do that later. But, you know, but I think it's the same thing where it's
Yeah,
just kind of like, I think there's a lot of nostalgia, you know, for like a literal, like, economy that no longer exists.
It only supported a small group of
You know,
writers, and now
right.
the economy doesn't pay as well.
And it
but
must
supports
have
a
been
much bigger
great,
one.
man. If I could have gotten $5 a word to do something, I would have been a writer.
Yeah, this is what happens with everything. I mean, everything gets disrupted. It's funny, an optometrist that I know was did this rant on Facebook about how don't buy from, you know, Warby Parker and those. They're, you know, I went to school and I'm having to pay it off and I can't make a living anymore because people are buying cheap glasses and please stop doing this to me. And I was like, please, you know.
Yeah.
I'm writing for free.
There are some real problems. I mean, I think that there are some issues, and I think that it's also like, you know, you're right, it is disruptive. You know, there's a lot of disruption happening in this particular marketplace, and I think the thing is that, like, I think how internet publications and print publications work together and are financed and are, you know, profitable, like in 10 years when it's not like, you know, brand new and everybody's had, you know, like a full decade to figure out how to do it. I think you'll see probably some regulation, you know, or normalization of what's happening.
Well, we're all having to be creative on both ends of it, and I appreciate that you guys do pay writers.
We're trying.
Trying to pay more, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you guys are here, and I think we're going to turn it over to the audience now and let them see if anybody has questions. Let's start here.
Hi, thank you. How do you generate income for your publication?
So since we're a nonprofit, our income and expenses are kind of split pretty evenly between advertising revenue, donations, and then grants on the federal and state level, which is similar to, I mean, BOM is in the same class as like Paris Review and Brooklyn Rail and Aperture in that ballpark. That's what we do.
We're their very poor cousin. We do the exact same, but like on a much smaller scale. And we're digital, so that you guys print. We need less to do what we do. I mean, it's like the writer, like if we paid all of our writers, we would have a much higher budget, but we don't. So it costs relatively little to actually publish the magazine.
We sell our books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you know, every other source. We go to conventions, we take pre-orders online. Basically, we're not a nonprofit, so we don't get any grants, we don't ask for them. The only money that we raise that way is with crowdfunding, and we approach it as a pre-order model. We basically, what you talked about, or actually, I'm sorry, you talked about that, right? For the $25 book, that's what we do. We price the book at $20 to $25.
Yeah,
and you get it before everybody else.
I brought proud.
And money comes in and gives me an idea of what I can do for next year. Am I going to publish one anthology or two? All depends on how much is sold in the previous year.
How much more would you need percentage-wise of like to be able to pay your writers?
Oh, but we do pay our
Like,
writers.
I know, but like, it's like not to say, well, it's not, it's not a lot, like an amount of money where you say, this is how I feel comfortable. It's like how much more percentage-wise would you need from advertisers? Not you specifically, but the others.
It's a great question. Like, I would want to pay our writers as much as we could with our operating budget. And because we're a nonprofit, we can move money around a lot easier. So it wouldn't be a case of, can we charge advertisers more and then put that money right back to the writers? Because that would also feel like an odd allocation of resources to tie those two buckets together. So for us, it would be, it's the old story. As we grow, we pay more. So we didn't pay, we've had online writing since 2010. We couldn't pay online writers up until January 2013 when we'd grown enough, and then we're like, okay, that money's all going to the writers. So now we're looking at 2015 grants, and if we have some artists donate some works for the auction, those do well, then we increase the rates. For that, that's for us. Yeah.
Let's go here.
Hi.
Wait, we'll go there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I run an online publication. We're on Kickstarter right now, but we publish stories from anyone female identified, and they're super personal. And these are stories by people who aren't necessarily writers. They're nurses, they're lawyers. So we're looking to raise money to pay our featured contributors who are writers, but what do you suggest for, as we grow, like to pay the people who are giving us content every month but aren't necessarily writers? So there's a lot more work involved with editing.
Well, I think you have to work within your budget. You have to, when you go to Kickstarter, you said you have a campaign going on right now. You had to have sit down and figured out what is the amount that I'm asking for, and presumably you figured out that a portion of that was going to go toward paying your contributors. So you can figure out based on your success if you happen to raise more than the initial ask. That will give you an opportunity to either buy more material or to pay the people that you've been working with more already. And you can kind of go out and look at what other similar publications are doing and see what their rates are. So if you're trying to attract writers who are writing for a living, you can see what other people are paying and just make sure that you're competitive with that.
This is sort of related, but I think that when you're running an online magazine, I think it's really important to think about what your business model is too. Like, because advertising isn't huge. I mean, it's like if you don't have a huge audience, you're not going to get a lot of advertising dollars. And like, I think one of the things that you do and what you guys have and what we had to create was something to sell. And I don't think that, I haven't seen a single long-term online only publication really demonstrate that it's a solid, actual, real business model that actually can yield something that's actually sustainable. And I think that that's something to really think about more than what the rates are that you pay is like 10 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. Like, how do you keep it up? It seems really inviting, online publishing, right? Like, I can find an audience, I can make a name for myself, people want to read it, but really, how do you pay for that? It's like, I know how many people are reading Goerge, and I see my advertising checks, and they're hilarious.
Yeah, monetizing content on the web is still such a huge conundrum.
Yeah, the only people who are doing well, in my opinion, and that are stable, have print components.
One of my favorite podcasts is Monocle's The Stack, which is their discussion of the print publication world. And they talk about like the third issue syndrome, where like you can get 2 issues with like friends backing or your rich uncle backing. And then it will be beautifully produced and full of like probably some of the best writing you'll see because you're full of passion and you're using your community and you have colleagues or friends who are giving you great stuff. And then by the 3rd issue, you kind of have to like stand on your own 2 feet, and it's like, I guess, like it'd be like starting a business. Like 90% of them don't make it, and that's the scary part of with the marketplace, right?
Yeah. Like, it's like writing is not a right. Publishing is not like it's not like your right. Nobody said you get to do this. It's like a business. It's a job, and it is a passion, and it is a talent, and it is all these other things. But it's like it's a damn job, And it's like, and I think the thing is, it's like you have to have a business plan and like a real shot at success. Because it's like if you were like, I'm gonna start my job is going to be picking pennies up off the store. You know, it's like there's no like, how am I going to find enough pennies? Like, are there enough pennies? How many pennies do I need to eat and live and have a house? Like, there's no plan there. Which is not to say that you don't have a really great plan, but it's just more that I think there are so many outlets, and that feeds into writers writing for free and people not getting a job and nobody know what they're doing. It's just important.
Do you have any plan to do anything print oriented, or is it?
So we're solely focused online, but we host large events and workshops offline where we get people to pay to attend these events. So we're creating this community online that we're taking offline.
What's the name of your?
Femsplain.
I funded you.
Yay!
Programs totally count, like as a nonprofit structure, like if you have an online component but you have programs that are fundable or that people are paying for a workshop, that like it doesn't have to just be print. There has to be something that earned income.
You can also collect your material into ebooks and sell those. Although your material is available online for free, you'll be surprised how many people would be willing to buy it as a completed ebook, just so they can, for the convenience of being able to read it on their Kindle. And that's a model that a lot of magazines in science fiction and fantasy genre actually successfully use, to fund themselves.
Let's go here.
So, I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard about any of this or not. You probably have. There have been some recent, mostly genre Kickstarters recently, where there are people, for instance, kickstarting a novel, and they're basically kickstarting their own advance, and then people get very angry, like, what, you're going to live off of this? Like, you're just supposed to be printing books. And there's been a lot of blowback against people's attempts at transparency, basically. Like, they're trying to be like, this is the reality of publishing, and people are like, I don't like how you're spending your money. So my question is kind of, have you had any experience with this, and how do you make decisions about transparency when you're setting up your own crowdfunding efforts, like sort of balancing, I want to be transparent and honest against, people are stupid and don't understand how publishing works?
I mean, this is like the Amanda Palmer problem, right?
I don't know who can.
Yeah.
Oh, not Amanda Palmer. Laura Palmer. I've been thinking about Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Amanda Palmer.
Reading's coming. Yeah.
Right, the Amanda Palmer problem, okay.
It's like, would be the most amazing problem if we were so overfunded. We had to explain how we're spending more money than we asked for. But even as we hit our stretch goal, we were like, oh, can we like up the rates for everybody across the board? Like, what do we do with this extra like $2,500? Well, with the fee, so like $33,000 basically. And we, to be honest, like haven't figured out how we're going to allocate it. If we can do it across the board, if we can like, one of the ideas is we've always wanted to reach out to contributors around the world and do a special editorial series for them, and instead of increasing rates. But I think the difficulty there is there is no one solution for all the different ways the backers feel you should spend their money for your institution. And I think that speaks to the nascent nature of crowdfunding, and especially nonprofits that would be asking for that money. But I hope this time next year, our next Kickstarter is so wildly successful, I can have a really good answer for you.
Yeah. I would invite anyone who worries about how we spend our Kickstarter money to like come to my windowless, dank office filled with boxes and books, and be like, oh, you went to like Paris, huh? Because they definitely didn't. I mean, we're just so broke. I mean, it's just like everybody's so broke. It's like it's hard on a certain level. Like I think with the potato salad guy, I think it's like like.
That's like an exception.
That's like tricky, like, or Zach Braff. It's like, but there's no one in publishing that's like.
Could I ask about your friends who did the Eating Wildly campaign that was so overfunded?
What about it?
How did they handle the maybe increased calls for transparency with hitting the super stretch goal?
I don't know, and it would be a good question for them. The reason I know as much as I know about their situation is because I'm part of a nonprofit that did a Kickstarter, and we wanted to be as overfunded as they were. Our first Kickstarter, though, we did 4 years ago, and it was new for people. And we're mostly asking from people in our community, and my aunt and uncle, and and they were all so like, well, what are you going to do with the money? Like, are you going to pay yourself? Like, yeah, that's one of the things. We're also going to get an office and a this and a that. But then when we did another one, and we heard that they did such a great, they were overfunded. But I don't know. I'm going to assume that people were asking them that, but I'm going to ask them and find
It
out.
was $150,000, right?
$125,000.
Which is still like, I mean, even
I
just
know,
like just
I
doing
know.
business money, like just functionally.
Well,
not
they're
that
giving out the
much.
book, so they have to pay for printing
Right.
more books.
You
so.
could spend $125,000 in 15 minutes.
That's right.
And do like totally reasonable things with it. You know, it's like if I just wrote all the checks I needed to write, it would be like, dag. You know, like
I have an aunt who is still asking me from the 4 years ago. I think she's like, "Are you doing okay?" You know, because
You
you
asked for
came and
money that
asked
one
me for
time.
money.
Yeah.
You know,
They
I
thought it
gave
was
you $100. Yeah, like, basically, yeah.
I don't accept the assertion that anybody should be able to tell you, oh, you can't ask for money to do this one thing. So the case that you brought up is actually a real case where a novelist who has had a couple of professionally published young adult novels went to Kickstarter and she asked for some money and she said, look, I'm going to use that money to live for the next 3 months while I write this next book. And a certain portion of the internet exploded and came down on her head, basically complaining that, hey, it's not your right to be paid to write a book. Even if you write a book, then kickstart it, you know? And honestly, to me, you can ask for money for any reason you like. And as a backer, I can then read your Kickstarter campaign, I can read the story, and I can decide whether I want to give you some of my money. And if I choose to give you my money to make potato salad, more power to you. If I choose to give you money to live off that money for the next 6 months while you write a book that I really want to read, more power to you. And so as a backer, as somebody who backs Kickstarter campaigns, I never have a problem with a bad campaign because all I do is I just kind of laugh at it and go, okay, I'm not going to give this person money.
Yeah.
But you know what, this next one, I will, because something about their campaign has struck a chord with me.
I think that's also, you can tell the story, right? If you're worried about it, tell the story. That's where your video or your frequently asked questions are. Like, how does a book actually get made? Well, I sit in front of my computer day after day after day, and I generate ideas, and I refine them. And like, I can't do other things because that's what I'm doing. You know, or I have to go to the library and research the thing that I'm doing. And I think that like, there's a little bit of like, movies seem like magic, books seem like magic. I think for a lot of the people who are who are your constituents on Kickstarter, like they think the thing that you're making is magic.
That is an interesting point, though, that the transparency, that, you know, so many things that we just assumed, well, it's a product. And now with crowdfunding campaigns, we're going to people and saying, help me make the product. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, how do you make the product? Right. You know, and where's my money going? Now that I'm
in a coffee shop listening to like your songs, like, you know, getting it done.
Right.
This question's for Lisa, I think, mostly. When you're thinking about building a community around your publication, do you, and you occasionally would have like a little bit of money coming in from grants or things like that, mm-hmm. And you wanted to create really good content that would show, you know, what the publication could do. How do you balance out, you know, the possibility of kind of money coming in there and only being available temporarily to pay writers that you really want, but not being around for a long time, and that potentially ruining the goodwill of this community that you're trying to create?
Sure. I mean, I think that that's like, what I do is like, obviously, like, I think it's been visible that I've done these Kickstarters and we've had, but you have to build in, like, for us, it's like, we started with a very lean budget, very, 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 very minimal, you know, sort of attention paid to fundraising and all editorial focus. And I think for us, the reason why we did the annual is because it's something that I can do every single year. It's something that earns income. Putting an advertising structure into place, starting to do ebooks of our special issues so that we can actually sell them and have earned income, instituting a gala, making sure that we have 3 different, you know, annual appeals that go out to our donors or readers every single year. And then thinking about how making sure that every project we embark on is something that I can communicate and shape for a funder. So it's like we would have never gotten the National Endowment for the Arts grant if we hadn't actually started paying writers with the Kickstarter money. So for me, we're really in this moment of scaling up. And so my promise, or unspoken promise, to the people that we bring into the fold to say that we're doing this is that, you know, we're actually professionals, we're nonprofit people, we understand how to create a multifaceted income structure, much like what Ryan was talking about, like that a more mature nonprofit would have, and so we're building towards that. So I think that it's always been in our mind that like, this is one piece of the puzzle. And I think that increasingly what happens with Kickstarter is instead of doing your like direct mail appeal where you send out 100 letters and 50 of them get returned and then somebody sends you like $1 legit on a check. I get $1 check every single year from this one person in Canada. It's amazing.
Is it the U.S. dollar?
No, it's well, it is, but it's crazy. Whatever. Every job I've ever had, there's been the dollar person. Sends $1 every year. But you know, Kickstarter feels like it replaces that individual campaign. So it's like, but there's not the stress around sort of sending your letter out and saying, we do this work, support us, you love us, come help us. You don't have to worry about alienating them because they don't feel, but Kickstarter has a different vibe to it, but it's really the same, I feel like.
Just to kind of follow up, sorry, I'm actually talking about like when you have money all of a sudden, if you're lucky enough to like have $10,000 to distribute to writers or something like that, but you're not sure whether your next Kickstarter is going to be funded, or you're not sure whether this grant that you have been able to rely on for the last 2 years is going to, you know, be able to be renewed or something like that. Do you want to just like pay the money because you want the really good content now and hope that that's going to come through later? Or do you try to scale back and try to preserve your community and try to think more about sustainability rather than paying people immediately?
I would never fund, like, so because I think in grants, like if I get, if you know, fiscal year 15, I have $10,000 to do this specific thing, I do it in I don't save the money. Right. And I think of Kickstarter in the same way that I think of grants. It's like, we have planned to do this thing in this calendar year. I'm not gonna like do 2 things and say, no, we're not gonna do it because we don't know if more money's coming later, because I would just then restrict my annual budget for the next fiscal year and say we don't actually have the cash coming in to do it. And that's when you sort of, and that's when you have kind of like emergency campaigns, or you go to a board member, or you go to whatever, but you keep that more internal. But I would never hold money from one year for the next.
Okay. We have time for about 2 more questions. So let's go here. Yes, this gentleman.
Okay.
Okay.
So I had wanted to ask the question, to the extent that your publication is supported by the online type of the online type of the advertising, that I was wondering the particular way you do go about obtaining those ads.
I think for us, we have like a mix. There's like the straightforward display ads on the website, and there's like sponsorships. I'm actually trying to like increase that because we can do, they can be more like project-based. We do have an advertising director who, she does an incredible job of this. She helps sell the display ads, the print ads. Our newsletter has actually been, it's like one of the oddest, like easiest place to sell in ads, because email, as some like the marketers in the audience might know, is just so much stronger advertising channel than display ads have been. There's something else I was going to mention about that. Yeah, and I think advertisers for us, we got really lucky because as a nonprofit, we could weather that disintermediation better and the crash better in like 08 or 09 than some of the other print titles that had become kind of fatted with print advertising that then they had to scale back and unfortunately lay off people, like let some people go. So by being small, I think we escaped some of the worst of it. So yeah, does that answer the question?
We use a company called Litbreaker. Litbreaker, which is based in San Francisco, and they have their own blocks of advertisement, and they sell directly for us, but they basically, go out to people in publishing and then put together like, a set series of ads that'll play on our site.
And be really relevant.
And and they're very targeted, because we really didn't like the sort of, we didn't have enough bandwidth to sell the ads ourselves. We didn't like Google because it was just bringing in, we couldn't manage it as much, and they would be like, like weight loss pills and we probably would make more money if we used them, but it was just like not worth kind of like the brand. We're like, you know, we're pretty like political, and it just felt wrong. And then I sell some sponsorships for like events and what have you. We sell ads for our annual in the actual book, and then I sell newsletter ads. And we could probably do more because it's like I'm kind of like a one-woman band on doing that, but you know, that's the structure.
Do you do anything like
We
that?
don't do any ads. We, we produce books, so the only ads in the books are the ads for the other books in at the back. So there's no, we don't generate any income from ads.
But I'll tell you, the truth is that you get the most money from print ads. Still, print ads, because you can't look away. You can't ad block it. Print ads are always going to get you the most money. I get we did our annual, and I sold more ads in like 15 seconds. I was late. I did it. It was like 3 weeks before, and I was like, "Y'all want to ad? This is how much." They were like, "Got it, cool." And it's like I can, you know, selling an online ad. It's like people hem and they haw and well, how many impressions, and are people really seeing it? And it's just like very much harder to sell, much cheaper.
One more question. Has anybody not had a chance?
For us,
yes, you in the middle there. Yeah.
So I know that Guernica does this. I don't know if Dom does this, but how about soliciting donations with sort of either within article content or after article content, just like direct online solicitation? Like, what kind of revenue do you see from that?
Not much.
Not much. Have you done anything with like paywalls or anything like that to try and get that going? Or
we haven't done that. You know, I was really impressed by. It was in Triple Canopy. It was. Oh shoot! Now I'm gonna blank on their name.
The pop-up on electric literature?
No, it might have been Triple Canopy, but they had like the fundraiser bar at the top of their site for the month that they ran their campaign, and it was visible but non-obtrusive. And you know, I'm our IT department, and I suck at computers, so I was like, how do they do that? Well, I'll figure it out next year. So we haven't done that yet. I'd like to experiment with it, but I don't think I'd ever want to make it too obtrusive, because I know that inevitably 75% of our audience, I mean, I know they're like young, educated, and right now they don't make a lot of money, and they don't need to donate money to us. So the other like 25%, like they'll give to us through our like appeals on social media and letters and Kickstarter.
If the editors would let me, I would keep a pop-up on the website every single time. I mean, I literally would, because it's like, for me, I'm just like, you guys are reading this for free. You are reading this for free. Like, you know, and it's like, there's not even annoying ads. We have blocked every single, you know, terrible capitalist thing from your face. You know, we are trying our very best. We're giving you 5,000-word pieces that are rigorously fact-checked and interesting, and from voices that you will not find other places a lot of the time.
You guys shouldn't have changed yourself to Budweiser Guernica for the Super Bowl, though. That was a bit much.
You know, yeah. But it's like,
cool.
but they get so mad. Michael's always like, when are you taking it down? When are you taking it down? Because I put one up 3 times a year for 2 weeks, and he's like, when is it coming down? That's the one thing he never misses, is an opportunity to ask me if I'm taking down that damn pop-up. And that pop-up is the best, because people are reminded that they are not, you know, this is not like a gift. You know, it is like a thing that we would like to keep doing, and that we would also like to make as accessible as possible. But that doesn't mean that, like, if you have $1, that like we wouldn't like your dollar.
But this is the other side of this, is like WNYC says, like, people will donate after being asked to donate the 10th time. Mm-hmm. They just have to keep asking. So I recognize that. I'm still like new to that world, and I'm trying to become better
at the bottom of every piece, it's like, we work for free. Please pay us.
You should say that on the pop-up.
We do. I just can't leave it up at 6 weeks a year. It's terrible.
As I was mentioning earlier, we raised a little bit of extra money for the first book, and we used that to buy original content for our website. So I bought a few extra stories I couldn't fit into the book, and I just put them up on the website for free. And at the bottom of each of those stories, there's a link to the book, so that if people like that story, it stands to reason they might like other stories in the book and could buy it. So that was pretty much the extent of advertising that we've done.
Thanks so much, you guys. Can we have a hand, please, for our panelists?